afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Marcia Miranda, international entertainer and media presenter. Today, we have a great show in store for you. Our program explores this beautiful monastery, the largest in the Caribbean, and it sits snugly in the lush flora and fauna of the Northern Range in Trinidad, just about 800 feet above sea level. In 1912, the Right Reverend Mayu de Cagney and Dom van de Sandem, having fled religious persecution in Brazil, acquired this suitable place upon which they and for the other monks dedicated the land to the Blessed Virgin Mary under the title of Our Lady of Exile. Monks in Benedict and the Abbey of Our Lady of Exile soon became a huge part of the spiritual landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. Inspired by St. Benedict himself, the monks made an indelible mark, having laid the foundation for establishing an organization to influence the lives of the nearby communities and those inhabiting the lands of Mount St. Benedict. Today, there are just about 10 monks at the abbey, and they do their daily rounds of prayer, and they live a monastic way of life as prescribed by St. Benedict. There's a liturgical ministry where hundreds of people visit the monastery daily, seeking prayer and guidance. And the sacrament of reconciliation is also offered. There's the seminary, the retreat ministry, woodwork, farming, and kitchen gardening. The very popular Pax yogurt is a product of the abbey, and there's also a religious shop. St. Peter's Home for the Elderly is also housed at the Mount, and the Living Waters community runs a rehabilitation home in this well-suited environment. Additionally, up on the Mount, you can see peaceful restoration at the Pax Guest House, where reflection or just wanting to be alone and quiet may be your quest. What is absolutely breathtaking and stupefying for me is the 360-degree view from Mount St. Benedict. It includes parts of Port of Spain, Central, East, and even as far as South Trinidad. And there's not a hint of noise from the buzz of activity and industry and commerce and business that's going on down there. Just pure tranquility, peacefulness, and undisturbed calm. And then there's the view of the sun setting between the two ridges behind the abbey. Picture the mist surrounding the ridges. It appears as though there's a canvas of variegated colors from the thick green forestry. It's absolutely entrancing. The abbey's interior itself is very pretty. There's a statue of Mount St. Benedict and a grotto where a statue of Our Lady of Lourdes is beautifully decorated. There are huge windows and tall pillars, and the altar is a large one upon which the choir, the brothers, the monks, and the abbots all sit at masses. A mass or any such service is one of pure humility and piety at the Mount. Stay tuned as we explore a whole lot more on our beautiful treasure, the Mount St. Benedict Monastery. Welcome back, everybody, to Marcia Miranda, international entertainer and media presenter. I am doing what's right with my mask, but just for this interview, I had to take it off so I could breathe. I want to breathe. Alrighty, so we're here at the foothills of Mount St. Benedict in a community called St. John's Road Community. Now, when we talk about Mount St. Benedict, we think about piety, solitude, tranquility, quietness, love, prayer, humility, and peace. The Mount St. Benedict Monastery lies just about 800 feet above us there. And even beyond that, there are two ridges, Mount Tabor and Mount Hermon, that are 2,000 feet above sea level. Today, we want to explore the correlation between this community here of St. John's Road and the Monastery of Monks in Benedict. So I've invited three guests with me today who are actually descendants of the foundation members of the community of St. John's Road. Let me welcome Lorna Herbert, Chris Garcia, and Veron Rose. Hi guys, welcome. Nice of you to join us. Thank you. We look forward to all the information that you're going to be sharing with us this afternoon. Of course, I'm going to start with you, Lorna, being the lady. You come first, and the fact that I know you have quite a lot of information specific to monks in Benedict. So I'm going to start off with what is monks in Benedict and who is monks in Benedict and when was that monastery actually founded? Monks in Benedict.
Okay, so thanks, Marcia. And to answer your tripart question, I would like to start with who was Saint Benedict. Saint Benedict was a monk who wanted to get away from the turmoil that was around him in his time, and he lived as a hermit away from the madding crowd, if I should use that word. And he was helped by one of his brethren with food because he was away. He became someone that was not, he wasn't very well liked by the rest of his community because of what he did. But he made up his mind that he would live this way. And from him came many monasteries. Mount St. Benedict follows in that pattern of life where they live away from people. The founders of Mount St. Benedict, our Mount St. Benedict, Dom Mayul, who came from Brazil in 1912 to form what was a thatch hut up at Mount St. Benedict, which now has become a large building, a large community, the one that we are familiar with. Now, when we look up at the mountain, we see something like a castle there that overlooks our village and our village of St. John. And a lot of people from St. John have lived, our grandparents, our foreparents lived in close communion with the people up at Mount St. Benedict. Many of them were employed there. But before I go into all of that, let me go back to Dom Mayul. He was Brazilian, and he came from his Benedictine monastery together with two other monks who wanted to come to the Caribbean because they heard that there were people they wanted to do missionary work. And they chose the mountains because it reminded them of their home in Brazil. Dom Mayul used that same track that the early inhabitants of St. John, because before Mount St. Benedict, there were people living in St. John village. They were indentured laborers who worked in the sugarcane fields. And their little community still exists in St. John. The people there were converted into Catholicism by these monks up at Mount St. Benedict. Now, St. John is a village that was it seems as a place that people wanted to be. So you find that the Canadian missions also tried to be a part of that community, but Saint Benedict was the more dominant one. Mount Saint Benedict. When we look up at Mount St. Benedict, just going up to Mount St. Benedict, as Marcia mentioned, a place of peace, just being there makes you feel as if you just want to stay there. You don't, it's even as children when we were small, we loved to go up there. We met with the priest who allowed us to walk about. Well, there was a gate that you couldn't pass through. And that made it even more mysterious to us. So when the monks came out, they were very kind ones who would do little tricks for us, who would bring treats for us. So it was a well-loved place. My grandmother, I remember, used to do the laundry up at Mount St. Benedict. There are many of the people who lived in the village, who worked up there, painters, carpenters, um, people who would maintain because they have gardens. And when you go up there and you look around, it has always been a place with a lot of plants and flowers. Now, Marcia, I've gone on and I have to go back to your question. Mount St. Benedict. Mount St. Benedict is a monastery with a community of priests and monks who are not priests because they didn't take that vow to. If you want to research the difference between a monk and a priest, you can go ahead and do that. But priests can say mass, and monks live the celibate life and the private, secluded type of life that St. Benedict set out for them. The motto used to be, keep death daily before one's eyes. And after a while, they found it too rigid. So it was changed that pray and I think I have to check that the correct thing, but I think it means living a daily life of prayer. And this is what they do. Many people from all over Trinidad come to Mount St. Benedict. And people in the village also go up there. There are people who go up there just to look over the whole of the island. It's a beautiful place for taking photos and all of that.
Well, thank you very much, Lorna. That was really, really great information that you shared with us there about Mount St. Benedict, the foundation of that monastery, and about St. Benedict himself. Now we have a better understanding of the role of Mount St. Benedict in this community. But we're still excited to hear a whole lot more about the positive programs and the shops and the guest house and all the things that Mount St. Benedict the monastery provides, and about the abbey. Because Mount St. Benedict, to the average person, Trinidadian, whoever, it's like a magnet. It kind of draws us. It draws the tired, weary soul, the family that wants unity, the ill person, the elderly person, to it. So we want to hear a whole lot more. So I want us to go across to Veron Rose. Veron, good afternoon again,
Good
and
afternoon, Marcia.
welcome to the platform.
Thank you.
Yeah, Veron, tell us a lot more about what's being offered up there, because it's not an ordinary church. It's different. It's different from the other churches, the other Catholic churches in Trinidad. So tell us what goes on up at the mount.
Okay. Well, I'm still a very young person, but I might be able to share some insight as to what goes on the Mount because I grew up there, and the monk provided a lot of in terms of entertainment, um, recreation. Plus, they offered a lot of services internally to the Mount. There was a sweet drink factory. There was a honey factory. There was the farm. There was a snacket, what you would call a snacket. Where it is right now, it used to be further down the road. But they offered a whole variety of stuff that, in terms of the people of the village, were able to access. People worked in these various institutions, such as the bakery, the farm, stuff like that. And being a young person growing up there, football, swimming, lawn tennis, um, table tennis, cricket, we all were including into that whole area of recreation. It wasn't exclusive to the monks, and well, there was also two schools there: the Abbey, which was a boarding school for students coming out of Trinidad and out of the area, and there was the technical vocational school where certain crafts, metalwork, woodwork, um, whatever technical stuff, drawing that they offered that academics in terms of didn't offer. Students would come to there and gain that kind of technical knowledge there. Um, the monk for me was a haven for in terms of peace and because the seminary, which is also part of the monk, where the seminarians who are studying to become priests, their function was to come into the village and mingle, take part in the church because there was also a church in the village. And their function was to like mingle and bring all the people in the village together. And so we used to go to the seminary, hang out, play table tennis, play lawn tennis. They used to cook some nice food for us. Um, there was a scout troop up there also. And so the monk provided a whole range of stuff for the people in the village and young people, older folks, because my grandmother, as Lorna said, used to wash, take the laundry, carry it to the river, and um, wash the clothes, take it back to the mount. So that was part of the network that was built between the monks and the villagers. And there was a certain amount of family like in terms of people were knitted together by the monk for the use of the services and what the monk provided. It wasn't just a church where people would just go to mass and go home. It was a place of um, freedom. It was open to all races, all religions, Hindu, Muslim, Catholic. You could be from wherever. The priests and they were always open to ministering and listening. And I think that is what they provided, and they provided an ear to most of the people that came there. And it I don't know, it impacted my life, and I'm sure it impacted most of the people who came to the mount and who are spread all over the world now. And it was just a heavenly place that gave us a sense of calm and peace and tranquility where we as an older people now could go back and still feel that sense of peace and calm in our various lives.
Veron, you mentioned something about a river just now. Now, I visit the Mount very, very often. I have not seen a river. So I've often wondered where is the water source and where did the people of St. John's and even the people, the monks and the abbots in Mount St. Benedict, where did the water come from? It's a mountain up there and there's no water source. So I wanted to find out that from you. That first. And another question I wanted to ask you is I'm looking at the three of you sitting here, and you all look like what we refer to as cocoa piles, right? Or in Trinidad as mix up Trinis, right? Does that mean, well, I shouldn't say does that mean, but tell me, who would what kind of people, what ethnicity were the people who migrated to St. John's? And I guess it would be because of the fact that there was work being provided there for you because the monk was being, the monastery was being built and so on. Tell me, that's what I wanted to ask you.
With regards to the composition and ethnicity of the villagers, um, a lot of the village people, as Lorna said, were indented servants, indented workers, and they made up a large percentage of the village. Another part of
But what indentured laborers? But what was the ethnicity? Was it Indian? Was it what? Who were the first people?
well, from what I know, as Lorna mentioned, they were the first inhabitants of the village. And later on, because of the sugar factories around Golden Grove and Caroni and stuff like that. And later on, a lot of the what you will call cocoa pile people, which is a mixture of Spanish and Caribbean and a whole mixture of people, came from Lupino. They migrated from Lupino from Cora to Lupino to St. John's, which is St. Michael road which is further up into the mountains. And then they had the Afro Trinidadians who came, like my dad, who came from Faizabad, met my mom, and settled there. So you had a cosmopolitan kind of mixture of people in the village where you would see people like myself, you would see Lorna, you would see Chris, and you were trying to figure out what race are you, but it's a mixture of different ethnicities and makeup because my grandfather on my mother's side was a Spanish man who came from Mayaro. And so there's a whole variety of people that comprise this village called St. John's Village. And St. John's Village is not just the road, St. John's Road. There's a sub let of well, a sub part of the village which is Basanta Trees. You have Japan Alley, which is now you have St. John Trees, Noel Trees, and further to the west you have Santa Margarita, but that's a different kettle of fish. But
Are there parts of Tunapuna as well?
well, no. St. John Village is bound by Tunapuna Road and well San Augustine in terms of so the river that kind of borders Tunapuna to St. John. That's what is like the boundary line that comprise St. John. St. John's Village is between Tunapuna and St. Augustine.
So wait a minute. Does that mean that Exodus Plantation now sits in the river? Just wondering. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, well, they originally Exodus was formed in St. John's Road.
Really?
They are an offset of the band that was there before, Gay Flamingos, and which I was a part of. And in 1982-83, Exodus was formed from Flamingos, and they were just on the western side of St. John's Road. And later on, they moved down to the spot where they used to practice at the Scarlet Ibis, where the Emerald Plaza is now. And they later moved across to the spot that where they are now. Culturally, the village is rich in culture.
Yeah.
Pan, Mas, Best Village, Chris, come later, but say what?
But you know what? I'm glad. I'm so very happy that you have shared that part of the St. John's contribution as well, and we now understand how the monastery and the monks and the abbots have impacted your community. Why your community is such a close community, and knowing the people that I know, like for instance yourself and Lorna and Chris, people like Julian. Talking about which, who are some of the other popular families in St. John's? Just quickly.
We have the Garcias, we have the Hernandez, we have the Castillos, we have the Herberts, we have the Timothys, we have the Julians, and Thurul, which is the central names that you would find in St. John's Village. Castillo Hernandez, Garcia, Timothy, Ramjuan, Maraj. So it's a whole mixture of people that comprise this village called St. John's Village.
So you refer to it as St. John's Village, not St. John's Road Village. St. John's Village. Well, my apologies. I thought it was St. John's Road Village. I always knew it was St. John's Road. But same thing. The road is St. John's Road, right? Okay. So I'm glad you brought us to the culture because, of course, we do have Exodus, not we. Look, now I want to clean it. Right? You do have Exodus, a great pan side and a wonderful lot of people who take part in the Best Village. I know the community center there and all that sort of thing, the schools, the everything that goes on in that community. And I really commend you all. And I realize that up in St. John's Road, you have such exactly what is a community, a loving community, people who support each other and always, I know you mean you're always together, always, you're solidified, your community. And I want to talk to at this point to Chris, because I know Chris very well. spent quite a lot of time with him. And a lot of people don't really know the real Chris Garcia, and he probably doesn't want them to know him because he wants people to feel like he's a bad boy. No, he's not. Chris, having come from the area, and I believe having been impacted by the the solitude and the peacefulness and the love of monks and Benedict, has turned out to be just that kind of person, a very loving, quiet, helpful, kind soul. That's how I know Chris to be. So I would let him speak for himself and talk about how growing up there in St. John's community and spending time, because I remember we were in Holland together and he told me about the times that he had been up on the mount sitting on the bench. And every time I go up there and I see the benches, I always think about Chris with his guitar creating music. So I want to speak to him about that, the impact that being a part of that community has made on your life, on your career, your family, and the person that you have now become.
Hi, my name is Chris Garcia, and I am only too honored and pleased to have been granted the opportunity to be on this program, Marcia Miranda's program. And today we're speaking about St. John Village and Mount St. Benedict, and that's where I am from. St. John Village and Mount St. Benedict, one cannot go without the other because from as far back as I could remember, both were entwined, as it were, and as it is, and I hope that it always will be that way even after I am not on this earth. Mount St. Benedict, I used to go up there every weekend. And as you know, being Chris Garcia and being an entertainer and traveling the world, what has kept me grounded was always the thought of Mount St. Benedict and the attributes of St. John Village. Those days, the place itself was very spiritual. Could be, and I'm 100% sure that it is because of the monastery and the way the people were with each other in the village. Those days, your neighbor was your family was your neighbor, you had respect. The words like good morning, good evening, good night, you can't pass anybody straight without saying hello. And that was a natural part of way of life for me. And I still carry on that regardless of what part of the world I'm in. A lot of people may not know this, only my closest friends might know that ever since I was a small boy, because of the way the monastery, what it was or what it is, I always wanted to be part of it, to be a monk. I know, I know. Many people saying, what? We are saying chatty back and all of it. Well, I'm a very spiritual person. I may joke a lot and kicks a lot, and that's just the child in me. But that's just how I am. But a lot of people, when they say on radio or wherever, Chris Garcia does this, he stops and help people, or he help financially in whatever way. All that came about because of the love that was nurtured and spread. And I also encompassed and kept him close to my chest that way of life. And as far as I can go and travel, I will always share that. It is with great hope that those days of togetherness and family values come back because it is so sorely needed. So not only here, all over the world. And I push that in every forum that I have. I push that as best as I could. Um, Born and bred, St. John Village. There was something that caught my eye just the other day when I went up there because I no longer live there. But I looked at the asphalt and it was much higher than the days when I was running around there. And I looked at the asphalt and something came to mind, and I'm going to put it in song. The history, the various footprints, that are between the layers of asphalt is historical and has a lot of memories in those different layers of asphalt. I looked at it very poetically and I thought that to myself, that could you imagine the amount of footsteps who have gone to the other world that have passed through these layers of, of asphalt, but not only in St. John, but throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Marcia asked a question about the diversity and the ethnicity of St. John Village. It is a melting pot. The different names from Hindu to Muslim to Christian. And what I remember about that St. John Village in connection with Mount St. Benedict is that love and togetherness was always paramount. That was a natural thing, and which I was a part of and always be proud to be a part of, and which I will always share wherever I go. So I have to thank St. John Village for a lot of things. I am today who I am, whatever you perceive me to be, or however you look at me, whether you look at me on TV or hear me on radio, whatever, the forum or see me on stage, I am much more than just that. My appeal to everybody, and I'm proud to say it on Marcia's program, is that lesson I learned in St. John's Village with the monastery, I pray. And it's funny enough, Mount, we pray. I pray that all the attributes and the stillness of holiness itself could pierce the rest of society throughout the country and by extension the rest of the world. You know, at one point in time, there used to be 100 monks walking all in white, like a parade, procession, walking up St. John's Road. And that was just a sight to behold. Now I understand that there are less than 10 monks at the monastery, which is sad, but it's a reality. But regardless of that, principles, morals, ethics, and virtues must always stand steadfast, regardless of the situation of anyone and anywhere. These pillars, which will make a fantastic human being, and by extension, wherever they go, they share that natural spirit with others, must stand out, most prominent, must be paramount. If it's not, then I dare say we're in a bit of trouble. So let me thank Marcia for granting me this opportunity to speak about the place I love dearly, St. John Village, Mount St. Benedict, close to my heart, always will be, and wherever my travels lead me, it keeps my foot on the ground, and I still keep reaching for the stars. Thank you, Marcia. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Chris Garcia. Very well said. Thank you so much for touching us here this afternoon. I want to thank my two other guests, Lorna Herbert and Veron Rose, for being with us this afternoon. And in just about less than half a minute, we'll be back at you to wrap this program up. Thank you so much. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for taking this journey with us through St. John's Village and the community there to the astonishing yet peaceful Mount St. Benedict Monastery. Join us next Sunday for another exciting and informative live on Marcia Miranda, international entertainer and media presenter. Have yourselves a great